Hello, if you're a man age 50 and over and feel weak, tired, heavy, or like your best years are behind you, this is for you. My name is Tom Wright. I'm the 57-year young former New York Yankee outfielder turned knuckleballer who is training to become the oldest MLB player in history. You might ask, Tom, how is this even possible? Over the last 50 years, I've developed what I call the Vitality Protocol. This has allowed me to do things in my 60s that most baseball players that are professional cannot do in their 20s and 30s. Would you like to know my secret of youth? Following the same vitality protocol that I follow, where you can get your strength back and feel young again. In this short presentation, I will outline this vitality protocol that I've used to become one of the strongest men in America. This protocol has completely changed men's lives that I've worked with over the last several decades. This is Bob Engelman here in the middle. He was one of the original Lettermen. They had 11 gold records. He was a really good friend. This is what he says. I've known Tom for many years. I greatly admire his strength and skill. I highly recommend this book to anyone who is interested in living a healthier life, especially those who are up in age like me and want to enjoy high quality of life until the day they die. This is a book that took me 12 years to research and write. You might wonder, Tom, how could it take you that long? But when you talk about, I didn't write it with AI. I wrote it myself. Started with a blank piece of paper, and I have over 400 references. But when you talk about things like cancer and heart disease and where to put your money, you better know what you're talking about, or else you'll look like a fool. So that's what took me so long to research and write that book. Here's another person that was on my chair of my master's thesis at Brigham Young University. L.J. Sylvester, he broke the world record 6 times in the discus. Won a silver medal at the, I think it was Munich Games 1972. And this is what he said. The concepts in Tom's book will help anyone live a healthy, happy, robust, fulfilling, and righteous life. This is Grandmaster Jun Rhee. I was privileged to be able to train with him. He trained Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali. He's known as the father of Taekwondo. He brought Taekwondo here to America. This is what he said. I love the way Thomas integrated the body, mind, and spirit in his book. His message has broad appeal and will help those who read it to create more health, happiness, and peace. I've been a personal trainer in New York City and Beverly Hills, California, and I've worked with literally hundreds of people. And most people I've trained are common everyday people that want greater strength and vitality. This is Jim Hepfinger, who lost 20 pounds and feels more energy and vitality. I've gotten to know Tom Wright well over the last few years. His insights have really helped me now that I'm into my 60s and I'm trying to slow down the aging process. His suggestions on exercise and particularly diet have been especially helpful to me. Let me ask you a question. How long has it been since you felt really good about your fitness level? Maybe high school or college, or maybe you're fit now, but you feel like it's an uphill battle. There's a few common reasons for this. 50 plus age-year-old men, first, they're trying to train like they did in their 20s. You've got to train differently, and I understand these things. You're training too hard, you're getting injured, and then you're quitting. It's kind of that up and down cycle. You're following generic fitness advice that is not built for men in their 50s. And you're following a fitness guru that is on steroids, human growth hormone, or testosterone. He might look good and healthy, but he's really not. And there's a lot of those out there. And the other thing I would say, and we'll talk about this a little later, is you're not learning how to rest and relax and to regain your health. Well, example is the best teacher, right? Here's me squatting 300 pounds 5 times. I did it easy without a weight belt. I could have gone up. I hadn't been squatting real heavy, so I didn't try to push it, but I did 5 reps pretty easy. This is on my Instagram account. Here's a front page article of me playing in California on a AA team in spring training. at the age of 56. My main pitch was the knuckleball, but my fastball was still 84 miles an hour. This is me deadlifting. I put a video up a couple of years ago on Instagram, have 1.5 million views of it. Me deadlifting 300 pounds 10 times at age 65. I can still do that today at age 67. There's not too many men, that are that strong at this age. And I've done all this, never taken a PED, performance enhancing drug, testosterone, or any other pills in my entire life. What you see is God-given strength. And, what I'd like to do is help you to have, the same blessings that I've been blessed with. I feel like I can help you, achieve the same types of things. You don't need to deadlift 300 pounds and squat 300 pounds to be healthy, but you do want to have the strength and vitality that you had in your youth, right? So I really believe that, we can maintain that on up into our 60s, 70s, and 80s. I know people that are in their 80s that are doing 100-mile races. So, there's really, there's no limit to what we can do, in our older ages. Now, this one thing that's unique about the program is I really try not to, suggest people do just one thing for their exercise. Most people don't like the gym. They don't like lifting weights. And I'm like, that's not a problem. I've created this company Wave, and we really, we'll create an exercise program if that's what you want to do in the gym, but that's not the focus. The focus is to get you out and to move your body, just do anything. And so, that's the focus. And I really feel like, that's the important thing, is just, any type of movement. Now, when we're talking about, what the things that you enjoy the most, if you focus on things that are whole body lifts, I didn't get a space in here. If you focus on things that are whole body lifts that work your largest muscle groups, those are your glutes, which is your butt, your hamstrings, which is the back parts of your legs, and your quads, which is the front part of your legs. You can get more done in 20 to 30 minutes of exercise than you can with, doing these isolated movements. And we here in America are kind of famous for the isolated movements because Schwarzenegger came here and kicked off the bodybuilding craze. But, if we look toward a lot of the other countries, they focus on the kettlebells and the barbells, the whole body movements as far as the weight room goes, and exercises that really work your whole body. I tell people if walking is your exercise, then don't just walk on flat surfaces, because flat surfaces, don't really hit your legs that much. I mean, it's good for your heart, but and it's good to move your body. It kind of gets everything working. But if you really want to kick in your largest muscle groups, you need to walk upstairs or up hills. And those will kick in the back parts of your legs, which are, 2 of the 3 largest muscle groups in your body. So I've broken the program down. I've created a 6-week challenge. We have 3 levels. We have beginning, intermediate, and advanced. So, start where you feel comfortable. If you're, the beginning is, you're just not doing anything. You haven't done anything for a long time. Maybe intermediate is you've kind of been intermittent over the years. And then advanced is, you're fairly regular in your exercise. But, if you have questions, this is just kind of an outline of the program. If you want more in depth in the full 6-week fitness challenge where it lays everything out for you, more than I can do here, then, DM me strength, and I can send that to you. It's free. There's a quote here: when progress is measured, it improves. When progress is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates, by Thomas S. Monson. Basically we want to be somebody that you can report to, so we can accelerate your progress. So let's move on. You might have a question, what is this WAVE? Why did you name the company WAVE? It stands for Worldwide Achievement, Vitality, and Excellence. When I was in college, I was introduced to the WAVE form of exercise by my professor, Dr. Barbara Lockhart. She's my co-host for my TV show, or for our TV show, and an Olympic speed skater. She was the best in the world for like 5 years. And most of the current research is saying that it's actually better to do intermittent exercise rather than the constant state. You know, that constant state was kicked off like in the 70s with the aerobics craze, where you get your heart rate up for a long period of time and then you let it drop. But they're actually finding it's better for your health and performance to do intermittent, where you get your heart rate up and you get it down, and then you get it back up, and then you get it back down, kind of in a wave type pattern. And so when I first started doing this, I took her challenge and put it to use in my strength training and out on the baseball field, and when I was running, you know, my sprints and things on the field and on the track. And what I did was I started, my resting heart rate was in the mid 60s. And within 3 months, my resting heart rate had dropped to the mid 50s. So I dropped 10 beats per minute in my resting heart rate. And, you know, some people say we only have so many beats in our hearts. You know, if this is true, my heart beats 14,400 times less beats per day, 5,256,000 less beats per year, which means I'll live about 14 years longer by lowering my heart rate by 10 beats per minute. You know, if this theory is true. Alcohol, prescription drugs, contention, stress, obesity, and many other factors, you know, increase our heart rate. And you know, the basic thing that I did is when I went in, and I would just do a set, like I'd do a set of squats, and then I'd sit down. A lot of times I'd lay down on my back and then just watch my heart rate and try to take deep breaths and just, you know, let my heart rate lower. And just by doing that in between my sets, and what it did was, it's like I would wait until my heart rate kind of bottomed out, and then I'd do my next set. So you're going to take, you know, for that to bottom out, it's going to take less time when you're less tired. At the beginning of your workout, it's going to take more time to rest in between your sets when you're, you know, toward the end of your workout. So just encourage you to do this. You know, this lowering of your heart rate using the wave type pattern. They say 80% of diseases are related to stress. You know, a lot of exercise programs are really stressful. These trainers have pushed their people way too hard. So people go from a stressful work environment to a stressful exercise environment, and then they go home and there's contention at home sometimes, and they're in a stressful environment there, and then they go to sleep at night and can't sleep while, you know, they're in a constant state of stress, and they wonder why their heart rates are elevated and why, you know, their health isn't good. So anyway, I felt like this was so important that I named the whole company after it. So anyway, so I really believe that, you know, that wave pattern of exercise, catch the wave and you'll be sitting on top of the world, famous Beach Boys song. So on to the programs. The following outlines 3 basic programs: aerobic, which is exercise anything over about 45 seconds, anaerobic, which is things under 45 seconds, weights or body weight, and then sport or activity. So you choose the one you want, or a combination. Again, we don't tell you what to do. We'll outline the program for you. You know, if you need more than what's here, then, you know, DM me strength. You know, I talked again about, you know, a couple here walking on flat surfaces. You know, make sure you if you're doing the walking, to go up hills or go upstairs. And then we have second, the aerobic set, which, you know, these are some of the big exercises that I would focus on. Squats and deadlifts are probably the best lifts in the gym. And ironically, they're the best things for athletes, but they're also the best things for old people, like in their 80s, 90s, you know, pushing 100. So you've got to be able to sit up out of a chair, and you've got to be able to bend over and pull your pants up, right? Or tie your shoes. So sitting up out of a chair is a squat, and bending down and standing back up is a deadlift movement. So when I played with the Yankees, I went to Major League camp with the Yankees, and the strength coach there said the best lift for baseball players is the deadlift, and that's why I focused on the deadlift. And I deadlifted over 600 pounds and squatted 500 pounds in competition, past parallel. So the good Lord's blessed me with this health and strength, but a lot of it, you know, is because I've been wise in the weight room, you know, and I've been wise out in the athletic field. And I'll talk a little bit more about wisdom in your training, and you know, when we finish this here. But bench and row, I always tell people, a lot of the military guys, I kind of feel bad because they have them doing so many push-ups all the time, and I see these military workouts. But the problem, with doing a lot of bench press movement or a lot of push-ups is you're not doing any rows, and it's like when you get that imbalance between the front and the back, the one side is stronger, the one side is weaker, and it causes imbalance and it causes injury. And so, a lot of women when they have their babies, they're lifting their babies when they're small, and it's not a problem. But then the baby starts to get bigger, and their backs start hurting them. They think it's because I'm lifting my baby. It's actually because they're not doing anything for their stomach, so the one side's pulling on the other, and it's causing the pain. So you've got to think push and pull. So the bench and row go together. The shoulder press, which is this pushing movement, and the pull down, which is the pull down movement, go together, and then the stomach, to kind of balance out the squats and the deadlifts, because you're focused a lot on the back and you want to strengthen your stomach. So anyway, those are the basic exercises that I suggest. You can do them at your home, your office, with or without weights. So those are your whole body exercises. Obviously, the push and pull movements are upper body, so it's not whole body, but it's just good to for just avoiding injury and just symmetry in your body, to think about that balance. And then sport or activity, do what you like to do. This might include basketball, softball, working your yard, tennis, golf. If you golf, don't take a cart, walk as much as possible. So I see people, pulling right up to the greens, and marshals has several courses. They don't like to see that when people pull so close to the green. You're supposed to stay quite a ways away. I think it's 30 yards away from the greens. But a picture of a man working in his garden, that's great exercise. Again, it's a squat and a deadlift movement when you're bending down and picking things up and pulling weeds and all that. It's great exercise. This simple plan, might seem, these simple principles might seem too easy, but again, they're the things that help me to lift, 500 pounds in competition, and hopefully my goal is to be the oldest player in MLB history. So that's the goal. I'm a knuckleball pitcher, so I don't need to throw a 90, 100 mile an hour fastball. If you're in a gym or athletic field, or even working in the garden, this is one of the other things that I tell my students is don't train to failure. And, we all had that high school coach, or those PE coaches in high school or college that pushed us beyond our limits. And, they said that last rep, when you're doing a pull-up is your most important rep. But the problem with that is that's when injury kicks in. And what they didn't tell you is that the strongest men in the world, like the Bulgarian weightlifters and the Russians, and it's like there's a book called Russian Strength Training Secrets for Every American by Pavel. And he says that, the Russians do not train until failure. The strongest men in the world don't train till failure. So my question is, why should you and I? We shouldn't be training to failure. So if you get to that last rep where you're doing a shoulder press or a bench press or whatever, and you can't do another one, you've probably pushed yourself too far. So, when you talk about greatness, here's a picture of Steve Curry. He's the greatest 3-point shooter in NBA history. He shoots 500 shots every day, and I think greatness is more related to consistency and repetition than pushing ourselves to exhaustion and injury. So just, important point to keep in mind. So let's move on to the nutrition section. Over the past several years, I developed an easy-to-follow nutritional analysis that help you determine your strengths and weaknesses. The first thing I'd like you to do is write down everything you eat for a week. And I've broken it down into these 7 categories: the grains, vegetables, fruits, legumes, meat, dairy, and sweets. And I've created, they have the government food pyramid in my book. I have the WAVE food pyramid. I think it's a lot better than the government food pyramid. But for this example here, let's just, write everything down And the first week, don't change anything. Keep it exactly the same, as because you've established these patterns over years and decades of your eating patterns, and we're trying to figure out where you're at so we can figure out what needs improvement. And so your first week, write down exactly what you're eating, and don't cheat. People want to cheat and pretend they're better than they really are. We'd like to see what patterns you've established over these years and decades. And then your second week, we'd like you, to do the same thing again, and then compare. And we have these graphs if you want to get my book or DM me strength, and I can send you all these, these 2 free challenges. But we have all these graphs where you can, list everything out here. It has boxes you can kind of check off, and helps you to be more organized. But don't worry about exact grams and all that stuff. 1 serving, we say, is about the size of your fist. So if you eat like an apple, that's 1 serving of fruit. If you eat some rice, maybe you eat 1 or 2 servings of rice. So that's just the general rule. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish patterns and then show progress, improvement. So that's the goal. And there's a lot of discussion out there about different nutrition programs and what's good and what's bad. You can kind of justify things, everything from the keto diet on up to the vegan and raw foodists, and everything in between can kind of be justified. But what I try to do is I try to tell people to focus on things that are whole foods, as close to Mother Earth as possible. And a lot of our foods, and that's why it's so good to grow gardens, because you know exactly what's going on. If you've sprayed any pesticides on it, if there's any bugs, that are bothering you, that you kind of figure out, what are good natural pesticides that we can use that aren't harmful for our bodies. So there's so much, junk out there in our food supply. We're overfed and undernourished here in America. So, just focus on whole foods that are close as possible to Mother Earth. Things that pretty much everybody agrees are good: the fruits, the veggies, the nuts, seeds, whole grains, and legumes like the beans and all those kinds of things. So if you kind of focus on this philosophy, you can't go too wrong. I mean, pretty much every diet, I know there's a few out there that badmouth fruit, but I'm like, fruits and veggies, or all those colors, have your antioxidants, and those are some of the most important things to combat, cancer and heart disease and all the problems that we face. So anybody that preaches against fruits and veggies, I just think they're kind of going down the wrong path. In Stephen Covey's book, he sold like 40 million copies. He says to begin with the end in mind. So my question is, what kind of life do you want to live when you hit 60, 70? I'm already in my 60s. I'm almost 70. I'm 67. Your 70s, 80s, 90s. What kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to travel the world, play with your grandkids, and live pain-free? Or do you want to be in an old folks' home with a debilitating disease brought on by your poor lifestyle? So I hope this short presentation helped you. We're here to help you. I've set up a whole company with a great support system, so we can help you in whatever areas you want. If you want to do things on your own, you can do them on your own. If you want our help, we can help you. So if you're a man over 50 and you want to rebuild your strength and vitality, DM me strength, and I'll show you the next step. So thanks so much for tuning in. This is Tom Wright signing off. Thanks so much.